Hold on to your seats, people, because what we're about to reveal could completely upend your preconceived notions about hip-hop and love. That's right, the unseen secrets, lies, and treachery behind the scenes will be exposed like never before. What if I told you that it's not something you've seen on television, but the most startling scandal in the cast is actually happening right now, and it's much worse than you could have ever thought. From network mayhem to backstabbing cast members, things are getting out of hand faster than a speeding bullet. What happened? Well, let's just say that the entire production was destroyed when Kirk Frost received a glimpse of what was actually going on behind the scenes. Rashida, who had previously maintained her cool and calm, is now at the center of a public controversy that could cost her. You'll want to stay for this because we've learned that Mendy is not just angry, but also prepared to burn down the entire business. Is this the end of hip-hop and love? Or is this simply the beginning of a far darker, more frightening truth? Discovered leaked documents, bombshell audio, and insider information that will completely alter the situation. This is not merely rumors. It's a network meltdown that has the potential to destroy a legacy. I promise you won't want to miss the glitz, glam, drama, love, and hip-hop that once exists. Fans watch the best reality TV show every week to see how their favorite celebrities dealt with love betrayal and their crazy personal lives. But what if I told you that the controversy that was developing was much darker behind the camera, can alter everything you believe to be true about the program, its actors, and its designers? Let's start by discussing Kirk Frost, who has made a living as the bad boy of Atlanta's love and hip-hop scene. You would think that after all these years, the guy would have learnt a few things about loyalty, especially to his own family. But it seems that Kirk's commitment only extends to his income. The rumors started a few weeks ago, but now they've gone viral like a TikTok video. What's worse is that it goes beyond just loyalty. Kirk Frost never anticipated this would occur. Rashida was meant to be the stable one who kept everything. His marriage to Rashida is about the network taking advantage of the couple for ratings, making plots more staged than you'd ever want to acknowledge. Kirk had been using his personal life as a public spectacle, but when the curtain eventually came down, not only his family's private problems were revealed, but the network's dark secrets were revealed as well. They were together until she understood that behind the scenes, things were being destroyed. What transpired behind the scenes? Let's break it down. Kirk had just finished filming a significant plotline concerning his marital stress and business struggles with Rashida, which was meant to be his redemption arc. Bear and fans were left with more questions than answers. It was meant to be his big comeback after years of adultery, cheating scandals, and being the show's villain. But instead of atonement, he received treachery from those who once supported him. You know, the kind of plot that would make fans cheer for him again were meant to help him, the producers. The startling truth was that Kirk's plot was never intended to have a happy ending. Instead, the producers exploited his personal life for dramatic effect, and they fired him when the ratings began to decline. Rashida, the professional who Kirk trusted, tried to maintain order, but behind closed doors, she was exhausted by the constant drama, the constant televised portrayal of her life, and most of all, the manipulation of others. Kirk was left in the dark and surprised by the network. Mendy Sees, who had just made his big return to the show after a string of legal battles and family troubles, was incensed. Word on the street is that Kirk's personal repercussions wasn't the only thing that left the entire group reeling. This wasn't a simple cancellation. The show's entire future was on the line, and the cast members could only sit in silence. He called Mona Scott Young herself to demand clarification, but she ignored his calls and kept him in the dark in true Mona manner, waiting for their destinies to be sealed by a network that had utilized them for years. Let's take a moment to consider what was actually going on here. Mendy sees a guy who battled valiantly to restore his reputation, but he faces a significant setback. His plot was heated up, particularly with his increasing conflict with Yandandy Smith, his wife, and the Queen of El-Hole. Yandandy was upset because she was torn between her family's loyalty and the demands of the network. This show had given her everything, including a platform, her public persona, and business empire. But now that the network was destroying everything, she wasn't sure what was left for her. Could she trust the people who had made her famous? Or had the game finally caught up to her? As all these rumors circulated, public discussions centered on the network's handling of the problem, and anonymous sources began to leak details about how the cast learned of its potential cancellation. A confidential insider said that other cast members were learning the same thing. The production team was even reassigning crew workers and removing already filmed parts. What was happening, and why was no one responding? The public learned about it through rumors and leaked memos. How is that possible? Receiving any updates as to why Mona, the program's face, was so silent. Rumors began to circulate that Mona Scott Young, who had built her empire on scandal for years, was now dealing with the fallout from producing a show that was based on phony drama. The producers were placed in a difficult situation. Kirk Frost apparently walked onto the set in the middle of this chaos, accusing producers of utilizing his personal information. They were trying to keep some control over the increasingly chaotic situation, but they were unable to stop the leaks. He claimed to have yelled, "I gave you everything, and now you throw me away when things get tough." Kirk felt totally deceived by the exploitation of his marriage to Rashida, the cornerstone of his character development, as cheap drama. This was about everyone's future now, not just Kirk Frost. And if the network could fire them in this way, what would happen next? By this point, the tension had escalated to a boiling point, and it felt like everyone, from Mendes to Yandi, was feeling betrayed. Fans could tell that the truth was finally coming to light as Yandandy went live on Instagram to try to explain her sentiments, bewilderment, and the stress of it all. She was distraught by the identity and legacy she had left behind. The last straw was when a leaked memo appeared that appeared to announce the end of Love and Hip Hop as we know it. Fans were furious that there would be no more reunions, since everything that had been established on this show looked to be falling apart before her very eyes. There would be no more spin-offs, and most definitely, no more of the storylines they had followed for years. But that's when the true scandal appeared. Did the cancellation of Love and Hip Hop affect ratings? Were there behind-the-scenes controversies? Or was there something far deeper at play? The shadows. This is where things start to get interesting. A person close to production claims that the ISA cancellation was actually due to internal problems and legal threats that no one outside the industry was aware of. It was difficult to predict that Mona Scott Young, who had always prospered in the scandal industry, would now have to deal with the fallout from the phony drama on which she had built her empire. However, the cast was left in the dark as their means of subsistence vanished, and later in the final encounter between Kirk and Rashida, the conflict that nobody saw coming, but that everyone was talking about after all these years, was the most explosive moment of it all. Was Kirk Frost's redemption journey a myth? Or was the truth much more sinister than anybody could have imagined? Things started to fall apart at a startling rate when the shock of the reports about the hip hop and Love cancellation subsided. The cast members who had previously depended on the network for fame and wealth now had to consider the prospect that their careers and more. The final episode wasn't simply a typical season finale. It was the moment that would decide everyone's future, especially the main cast. However, the truth wasn't confined to the backstage elements. It was exploding into Let's Start with Kirk Frost, who believed he had earned his way into atonement when Mona Scott Young first promised him a return. Kirk didn't simply accept the offer. He'd plunged right in. The season was meant to be his opportunity to change his ways, repair his marriage to Rashida, and prove to the world that he was more than just the antagonist. But the network instead exploited his personal life for drama, and when the program required it, something new was dropped like a hot potato. But behind the scenes, Kirk was not only frustrated, he was furious. Imagine your entire life being publicly displayed, and then having the people you trusted turn on you at the most crucial moment. Kirk's grievances for the show's cancellation weren't limited to that. They also included exploitation, as the producers had exploited his tale to boost ratings at the expense of his family's reputation. His marriage to Rashida had been exploited as a cash cow for when things became too chaotic. It appeared that he and Rashida had been cast aside. At the center of the storm was Rashida, who was genuine madness, the woman who had once been the model of professionalism and elegance, had had enough of the reality TV machine. She had led the program through numerous scandals, but she was tired of playing the role of the devoted wife who stands by her husband no matter what. Personal life was staged for the cameras, and just when it looked like things might get worse, Mendices entered the conflict. The guy who had fought for his second chance and survived the fire was now dealing with nuclear fallout from sources close to him. Stated that in addition to being furious at the cancellation, he was also incensed at the producer's lack of contact. As his plot heated up, particularly with his tense relationship with Yandi, he was resolved to alter his appearance to reflect the public that he was more than simply a man caught in the crossfire of family conflict. Yandandi Smith was also affected by the strain. The famous pair, who had developed a bond in front of the cameras, were now secretly fighting about Yandi's devotion to the show, had been put to the test over the years. But now it was falling apart entirely. Her personal and professional lives were colliding, and she was ensnared in a whirlwind of accusations, backstabbing, and public scrutiny. What was worse for Yandi was the feeling of treachery. She had created an empire on the show's foundation for years, and now that the network's future was uncertain, she thought that all she had worked so hard to achieve was slipping away from her. Her personal connection with Mendices, the man she had battled for, was also in danger. The D castmates were clearly tense with one another, and there were already tales of fights and intense disagreements between them. Mendi thought that Yandi wasn't really on his side, while Yandi believed that Mendices was more devoted to the show than to their family, followed by the shocking audio leak that nobody anticipated. Rumors of an internal meeting between Mona Scott Young and a network official were spreading like wildfire, and the leaked footage validated the worst suspicions of the Mona Scott Young was heard on the tape, stating, "We can't keep covering this mess." It was evident that the program had been too wild and dramatic to continue. To many, this wasn't just about cancelling. This program was about the entire system breaking down, about individuals being abused for financial gain, about their personal lives being used for entertainment, and about no one being left to bear the consequences. The leaked audio was like the last nail in the coffin, and fans went crazy on social media. But the mayhem didn't stop there. Insiders started exposing more startling truths. It seems that the network had been under a lot of strain for months. The media was analysing every phrase and every pause, trying to determine whether this meant that hip-hop and love would never be the same again. According to people close to the show, the network was in a precarious situation due to legal threats, internal conflicts, and public scandals. One source stated that the final episode would include an unexpected announcement the network was getting ready for. The truth, however, was more sinister than anybody had anticipated. As the season's last episode approached, emotions were so high that the actors could not communicate with one another without feeling as like they were being totally rebooted. Like it would blow up, Mendy Sees and Yandy, who were formerly depicted as the ideal marriage, were now fighting, and Rashida and Kirk, the golden couple, were not speaking to each other anymore, due to the truth that the program had twisted them. Mendy's continuous accusations against Yandy for being too faithful to Mona, and Yandy's accusations against Mendy for being too dedicated to the program, revealed the relationship's previously imperceptible fractures. Meanwhile, the production crew was found in the middle. An unnamed source revealed that the set had become so heated that there were physical altercations between the actors. Desperate to save face, the network started removing footage from editing in an attempt to conceal the chaos that was taking place. Screaming matches, private altercations, and legal threats now constituted the show's final days. The final episode was meant to be a climax moment, but it was evident that it had instead become a final act of betrayal for all parties involved as the production approached its Fans were left with more questions than answers, as the scandalous allegations about what actually transpired behind the scenes of hip-hop and love grew more intense, and the cast and crew were all confronted with the hard realization that nothing would be the same in the last days. Truth was emerging, and before long, everything would be revealed for what it truly was. The catastrophic fallout was just getting started, and by the time it was all over, there would be no going back. The last curtain had fallen, but it wasn't finished yet. A long shot. As the world kept speculating about love and hip-hop's cancellation, nobody realized that the most startling revelation was still to come. The last blow to the brand wasn't going to come from rumors on social media or the leaked memos from. The network was on the verge of coming right out of the storm itself, and the tension amongst the cast and crew was intense as the final episode approached. The final scene was supposed to be a heartbreaking news that would leave the fans in shock, but the audience was unaware that Mona Scott Young, the queen of reality TV drama, had already accepted the inevitable. She had utilized the chaos to boost her ratings. But now the game had turned against her. What was there to save? Behind the scenes, a last production conference was held that would decide the franchise's future. According to insiders, Mona and the network executives had lost control of the storyline. The show was changing, and the feuds and disputes had grown too. Out of control, and the harm was too great to conceal. According to one source who attended the meeting, it felt more like an interrogation than a creative conversation. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," Mona reportedly said, her voice shaking. The network, according to sources, has already started looking into the prospect of rebranding, but it didn't come without a cost. The program has become too toxic. One unnamed crew member stated, "We can't just keep everything the same." The show was challenged not only by internal turmoil, but also by the network's long-standing realization that the exploitation model they had been using for years was unsustainable. The audience had begun to decline, and as the meeting progressed, the once unstoppable empire of love and hip-hop began to show signs of weakness. Advertisers were no longer willing to support a reality program that was making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The cast members were being cut loose and treated like throwaway, and some, like Kirk and Rashida, were finally recognizing that the network had only used them for drama and had never given any thought to their future. The issue started to hit harder than any dramatic episode. While Rashida was sobbing softly in the corner of the room, Kirk allegedly stated, "They've been throwing us under the bus for years, and now they want to blame us for the mess." Rashida had built her brand on hip-hop and love, that she had put her everything into it, and now it was all falling apart. But the thing that stung the most was not the cancellation, but rather the idea that no one was interested in their family anymore. They were merely puppets in a game of TV ratings that Mendy sees whenever the tenacious fighter refuses to leave. The animosity between him and Yandi, who was previously a symbol of tenacity and cooperation, was at an all-time high, according to sources, and Mendy reportedly demanded answers after getting yet another evasive response from Mona over the status of the program. Already thinking about leaving the show if nothing changed, but his betrayal of Yandandi, whether real or imagined, was only making things worse. In the meantime, Yandi was attempting to remain composed, and the emotional toll of the whole situation was clear as she. The underlying animosity between Yandi and Mendy Sees was intensifying, and rumours circulated that they had been at odds for months. With her career and personal life on the line, Yandi's allegiance was being questioned by both her admirers and her fellow cast members, and their connection had been further strained by the performance. The cast's developing discord was turning into a problem that no one could ignore, and the backstabbing, betrayals, and personal feuds had gotten so bad that it was hard to tell who was whose side. Even Mona, who had meticulously orchestrated the mayhem over the years, was finding it difficult to maintain control. Her legacy was in ruins, and the actors were aware of it. But the fans were left in shock as the last curtain came down on the love and hip-hop story. Online petitions to preserve the show immediately gathered traction. Hashtags like Chocker Save Love, Chocker Hip Hop, and We Need More Love were trending. But despite all of the clamour, the show's demise was certain. Some fans, however, continued to hope that the network would. The last straw was a hacked voicemail from a network official that altered everything. The message, which was purportedly made to a major advertiser, talked about the network's intention to cut down. The executive was heard saying, "The show has become a liability. We should have cancelled it a season ago." As though the network had acknowledged that the baggage they had, the words in the message were like a kick to the gut. Accrued over the years, had finally come up with them. When the message was made public, it shocked the fandom. At once, fans and former cast members reacted to social media to accuse the network of ruining the show they had loved. Mona Scott Young reacted with an official statement, disputing the validity of the voicemail, but the damage had already been done. Some accused producers of manipulating the cast, while others said that she had exploited her influence to undermine the show's entire core. As she attempted to rescue what little remained of her empire, the world watched as her credibility collapsed, leaving the cast members to pick up the pieces. The show that had brought in the weeks that followed, the voices of the fans became louder, and the backlash against the network reached a fever pitch. Former hip-hop and romantic stars had lost their fame, riches, and recognition, and their legacies were suddenly in danger of vanishing. Hop participated by sharing their opinions about the show's history and personal significance, but amid the confusion, something unexpected happened. The cast members started to regain control. Kirk and Mendy Seas met with the production business that may provide them with the independence they had been denied for so long. The concept of an independent, uncensored, and raw reality show began to take shape. There would be no more produced fights or scripted drama, only real life as seen from their point of view. As the last curtain arrived on Love and Hip Hop, the actors proceeded with their new endeavour, but the issue still remained. Was this the end of the heritage, or the start of a new era? The drama seemed to go on forever, but this time the actors would be in charge. The audience was left wondering, how much of this was the real story, and how much of it was scripted? As the new series started filming, the truth was finally going to be exposed. The stakes couldn't be greater. What do you think, people? The long-term demise of hip-hop and love? The long overdue result of backstage drama, or was it just another attempt to increase the ratings? Do you think the network was unable to manage the chaos? Or did the cast members have a secret purpose of their own? Are you prepared for Kirk's next chapter? Taking charge with Rashida and Yandi Mendius. Tell us about their personal stories in comments below, like whether you believe the collapse of Mona's empire, and subscribe. For more startling behind-the-scenes footage, exposes that are unique to you, assure you that you won't want to miss what comes next. Pay attention and keep the scenario is unfolding.